It was a cold October afternoon in 1990, and Mike Tyson had just finished a training session at his gym in Catskill, New York. He was preparing for his upcoming fight against Evander Holyfield, spending long hours perfecting his combinations, working on his defense, staying sharp. At 24 years old, Tyson was still the most feared man in boxing, still undefeated in the minds of most fans despite the shocking loss to Buster Douglas earlier that year in Tokyo. He was hungry to reclaim his throne, to prove that loss was a fluke, an aberration in an otherwise dominant career. After training, Tyson decided to stop at a small supermarket on the edge of town to pick up some water and fruit. He pulled his black Mercedes into the parking lot, found a spot near the entrance, and was about to get out when he noticed something happening about 50 feet away that made him pause. An elderly man, probably in his late 70s, was struggling to load grocery bags into the trunk of an old beat-up sedan. He was thin, frail-looking, moving slowly and carefully like every motion caused him pain. Standing next to him was a younger man, maybe in his early 30s, tall and heavyset, wearing a leather jacket and jeans. The younger man was talking loudly, gesturing aggressively, clearly angry about something. Tyson sat in his car for a moment, watching. He couldn't hear what was being said from this distance, but the body language told the story. The elderly man was trying to ignore the younger one, focusing on his groceries, but the younger man kept stepping closer, getting in his face, pointing at the old sedan. Then Tyson saw the younger man grab one of the grocery bags from the elderly man's hands and throw it on the ground. Cans and boxes scattered across the parking lot asphalt. That was enough. Tyson opened his car door and started walking toward them. As he got closer, he could finally hear the conversation, or more accurately, the one-sided verbal assault. "You hit my car, old man," the younger man was shouting. "You scraped the whole side of it with your piece of junk. Look at this." He pointed to a small, barely visible mark on the side of his pickup truck parked next to the sedan. The elderly man's voice was shaky, frightened. "I didn't hit anything. I was very careful. That mark was probably already there." "You're lying!" the younger man yelled, stepping even closer, looming over the frail old man. "You're gonna pay for this. I don't care how old you are. You're gonna give me $500 right now, or I'm calling the cops and telling them you tried to flee the scene." "I don't have $500, the elderly man said, his hands trembling as he tried to pick up the groceries that had been thrown on the ground. "Please, just let me go home. I didn't hit your truck." The younger man kicked one of the cans away as the elderly man reached for it. "I don't care what you have or don't have. You're not leaving until you pay me. Maybe I should just take your car as payment. Looks like it's worth about $50. Probably do you a favor putting it out of its misery." The elderly man straightened up as much as his bent back would allow, trying to maintain some dignity. "Young man, I'm telling you I didn't damage your vehicle. Now please, leave me alone. I just want to go home to my wife. She's waiting for me." The younger man laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. "Your wife?" "She's probably hoping you don't come back, old man. Probably tired of taking care of a useless fossil like you." That's when Mike Tyson's shadow fell across both of them. His voice was quiet, but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Is there a problem here?" Both men turned. The younger man's aggressive expression faltered for just a moment when he saw Tyson, but he didn't recognize him immediately. Tyson was wearing a hoodie and sweatpants, still sweaty from training, nothing that screamed heavyweight champion. "Yeah, there's a problem," the younger man said, trying to regain his aggressive posture. "This old man hit my truck and now he's trying to get out of paying for it. Mind your own business." Tyson looked at the elderly man. "Did you hit his truck?" The elderly man shook his head. "No, sir, I didn't. I was very careful when I parked. I always am because my hands shake and I don't want to cause any accidents. That mark on his truck, it's old. You can see the dirt in the scratch. That's been there for weeks at least." Tyson walked over to the pickup truck and examined the mark closely. The elderly man was right. The scratch had dirt and grime in it, clear evidence it wasn't fresh. He turned back to the younger man. "He didn't hit your truck. This scratch is old. You're trying to scam him. Or—" The younger man's face reddened. "Who the hell are you, his lawyer? I said he hit my truck and he's going to pay for it. Now both of you get out of my face before I make you." Tyson took a step closer. The younger man was about 6'2", probably 220 pounds. Tyson was 5'10", about 215, but anyone who knew anything about fighting could see the difference. Tyson moved with a coiled intensity, a predator's grace. The younger man moved like someone who'd been in bar fights and thought that made him tough. "You're not going to make anyone do anything," Tyson said calmly. "You're going to apologize to this man for harassing him, for throwing his groceries on the ground, and for insulting his wife. Then you're going to get in your truck and leave." The younger man laughed, but it sounded forced. "Or what? You're going to fight me? You and this old man going to team up?" Tyson pulled back his hoodie, revealing his face fully for the first time. The younger man's laugh died in his throat. His eyes went wide. "Oh, shit. You know who I am?" Tyson asked. The younger man nodded slowly, the color draining from his face. Yeah, I know who you are." "Good," Tyson said. "Then you know I don't bluff, and you know what I'm capable of. So I'm going to say this one more time. Apologize to this man, pick up his groceries, and leave." The younger man looked around the parking lot desperately, as if hoping someone would come to his aid. But the few people who had gathered to watch were keeping their distance, and none of them looked sympathetic to his situation. "Look, Mr. Tyson," the younger man said, his voice suddenly much smaller. "I was just trying to get what's fair. He hit my truck." "Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't," Tyson said. "But we both know he didn't. We both looked at that scratch. It's old. You saw an elderly man alone and you thought you could bully him into giving you money. You thought because he's old and weak that he couldn't defend himself. That makes you a coward." "I'm not a coward," the younger man protested weakly. "Yes, you are," Tyson said flatly. "A real man doesn't intimidate someone who can't fight back. A real man doesn't threaten senior citizens in parking lots. You're a bully and a coward, and right now you've got a choice. You can apologize and leave with your dignity, or I can make this a lot worse for you." The elderly man spoke up, his voice still shaky but braver now with Tyson standing beside him. "It's okay. I just want to go home. I don't need an apology." Tyson looked at the elderly man with respect. "That's generous of you, sir. But he needs to apologize. Not for you, but for himself. Because if he doesn't learn this lesson now, he's going to keep doing this to other people." The younger man's shoulders sagged in defeat. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "Louder," Tyson said, "and mean it. Look him in the eyes." The younger man raised his head and looked at the elderly man directly. "I'm sorry for yelling at you. I'm sorry for throwing your groceries. I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that." The elderly man nodded slightly. "Thank you." "Now pick up his groceries," Tyson instructed. The younger man bent down and started gathering the scattered cans and boxes, putting them carefully back into the bags. When he was finished, he handed them to the elderly man without making eye contact. "Thank you," the elderly man said quietly. The younger man just nodded. Tyson wasn't finished. "What's your name?" he asked the younger man. "Derek," the man answered reluctantly. "Derek what?" "Derek Patterson." "Okay, Derek Patterson," Tyson said. "I'm going to remember that name. And I'm going to ask around this town about you. If I hear that you've been harassing anyone else, if I hear that you're still out here being a bully, I'm going to come find you. And next time, we're not going to have a conversation. Do you understand?" Derek nodded vigorously. "I understand. I won't. I promise." "Good. Now get in your truck and leave." Derek practically ran to his pickup truck, started the engine with shaking hands, and drove out of the parking lot faster than was probably safe. Tyson turned to the elderly man, his expression immediately softening. "Are you okay, sir? Do you need help loading these groceries?" The elderly man smiled, tears forming in his eyes. "Thank you, young man. Thank you so much. I thought he was going to hurt me. I thought maybe this was how it was going to end, in a parking lot over a lie." "You don't have to thank me," Tyson said, gently taking some of the grocery bags. "Let me help you get these in your trunk." As they loaded the groceries together, the elderly man kept looking at Tyson with wonder. "You're Mike Tyson, the boxer." "I am," Tyson confirmed. "I've seen you fight on television," the elderly man said. "My grandson loves watching you. He says you're the toughest man in the world." Tyson smiled slightly. I don't know about that, but I try to use what I have to help when I can. The elderly man extended a shaking hand. My name is Walter Harrison. I'm 82 years old. I've lived in this town my whole life. I was a teacher for 40 years at the elementary school. I taught hundreds of children, and in all that time, I'd never been spoken to the way that young man spoke to me today. It shook me more than I want to admit. Tyson shook his hand gently. I'm sorry you had to go through that, Mr. Harrison. People like him. They target people they think can't fight back. They're cowards looking for easy victories, but you stood your ground. You didn't give in. That took courage. Walter's eyes were wet now. I was terrified. If you hadn't shown up, I don't know what would have happened. He might have taken my car, my wallet, everything. And at my age, with my health, I couldn't have stopped him. You're safe now, Tyson said. And guys like Derek, they only have power when nobody stands up to them. The moment someone does, they fold like a cheap tent. Walter finished loading the last bag and closed his trunk. Can I ask you something? He said to Tyson. Of course. Why did you help me? You don't know me. You could have just gone into the store and ignored what was happening. Tyson was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I grew up in a neighborhood where people looked the other way when bad things happened, where the strong preyed on the weak and everyone just accepted it as normal. I was one of those weak people once, small, scared, alone. Then someone helped me. A man named Cus D'Amato saw me heading down a bad path and he stepped in. He didn't have to. He could have ignored me like everyone else did. But he didn't. He helped me, trained me, gave me a chance to be something more than a street kid heading nowhere. So when I see someone who needs help, I help them. It's that simple. Walter smiled warmly. Cus D'Amato was a lucky man to find you, and you were lucky to find him. We were lucky to find each other, Tyson agreed. Mr. Harrison, do you live far from here? Just about 5 miles down the road, Walter said. I live with my wife, Dorothy. We've been married for 56 years. Are you okay to drive? Tyson asked. Your hands are still shaking. I'll be fine, Walter assured him. The shaking is from Parkinson's disease. It's always there. But I can still drive safely. I'm very careful. Tyson nodded. Okay, but if you ever need help, if anyone ever bothers you again, you call the police immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself. I will, Walter promised. He paused, then added, You know, I'm going to tell my grandson about this. He's 12 years old and he idolizes you. When I tell him that Mike Tyson helped his grandfather, that you stood up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself, it's going to mean the world to him. Tell him something else too, Tyson said. Tell him that being strong isn't just about muscles or fighting. It's about standing up for what's right. It's about protecting people who need protection. It's about being brave enough to step in when everyone else walks away. That's real strength. I will, Walter said. I'll tell him exactly that. The two men shook hands one more time. Walter got into his car, started the engine, and gave Tyson a small wave before carefully backing out of his parking spot and driving away. Tyson stood there for a moment, watching the old sedan disappear down the road, making sure Walter made it safely out of the parking lot. Then he finally headed into the supermarket to buy the water and fruit he'd come for in the first place. Inside the store, several people who had witnessed the confrontation in the parking lot came up to him. They thanked him, shook his hand, asked for autographs. One woman, a cashier in her 50s, had tears in her eyes. That was the most decent thing I've seen in years, she told him. Most people would have just walked past. You didn't have to do that. Yeah, I did, Tyson said simply. That could have been anyone's grandfather out there. Word of what happened spread through the small town quickly. By the next morning, everyone knew that Mike Tyson had stood up for an elderly teacher, being harassed in a parking lot. The local newspaper ran a small story about it, and Walter Harrison gave an interview talking about how grateful he was, how scared he'd been, and how Mike Tyson had restored his faith that there were still good people in the world. 3 days later, Tyson received a letter at his training camp. It was from Dorothy Harrison, Walter's wife. In it, she thanked him for protecting her husband, for giving him back his dignity, for showing him that kindness still existed. She included a photo of their grandson wearing a Mike Tyson t-shirt, grinning from ear to ear. Walter told our grandson the whole story, she wrote. He said he wants to grow up to be strong like Mike Tyson, not so he can hurt people, but so he can protect them. You gave an old man his courage back, and you gave a young boy a hero worth believing in. Thank you for being the kind of man who steps in instead of walking away." Mike Tyson kept that letter, just like he'd kept the letter from the pregnant woman in Brooklyn. These moments, these small acts of standing up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves, they meant more to him than any championship belt. Years later, when Tyson's life had gone through its ups and downs, through more losses and controversies and personal struggles, he would sometimes think back to moments like that afternoon in the Catskill parking lot. He'd think about Walter Harrison and the pregnant woman, and all the other times he'd used his strength not to destroy but to protect. Those were the moments that reminded him who he really was, beneath all the fame and the fear and the complicated public image. He was still that kid from Brownsville who understood what it felt like to be powerless, who remembered what it meant when someone stepped in to help. And he was still the student of Customato who had taught him that real power wasn't about how hard you could hit, but about having the character to know when not to hit at all. The story of Mike Tyson and Walter Harrison became one of those quiet legends that circulated in boxing gyms and small towns, a reminder that heroes don't always wear capes, and that sometimes the greatest victories happen not in front of thousands of screaming fans but in parking lots where nobody's watching except the people who need help. Because on that cold October afternoon in 1990, Mike Tyson didn't just protect an elderly man from a bully. He showed everyone who witnessed it what true strength looks like. Not the strength to intimidate or destroy, but the strength to stand up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves. The strength to step in when everyone else walks away. The strength to be more than just the baddest man on the planet, but a good man when it mattered most.